Hey everybody, Matt Michaels here, and I'm joined by Sin City Steve. And today we are talking with SiriusXM's very own, the host of MMA Tonight and Busted Open Radio, Mr. Ryan McKinnell. Ryan, how you doing, brother?
What's up, guys? How's everybody doing out there? I like the setup. We all got backdrops. I feel like I don't have the official Vegas BadBoyz podcast backdrop, so I tried to spice it up a little bit. But I like what you got going on over there.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much, man. It's definitely no Metallica poster plaque, but
I'm sure it will look something like this. I mean, I feel like if I'm just this is the first time we've actually hung out and discussed and had good conversation about whatever it may be. But just if I'm judging, taking a book by its cover, I feel like we would all have metal posters behind us or various our living rooms looking like a comic book store on some level. You know? I have a very understanding wife. I'm very lucky.
To be honest, if you took away the background, I have Lars himself tied up behind here. So
that's awesome.
The first thing I want to ask you about is we get into the career and everything. The first thing is, how is your bulldog doing?
He's well. First of all, he's 11. So that's my bulldog, Paulie. He's named after White Sox great Paul Konerko. He's 11. He just had his 11th birthday in July, and we got some bad news. So we're trying to enjoy what time we got left with him. We don't know exactly how much time we got left, but I'll tell you this: as a dog owner who has had my first dog was a German Shorthair, then it was a chocolate lab, and then it was a Rottweiler in college. So it was stages, right? And each time it was a lone dog. I didn't have multiple dogs. So what it is when you kind of have that experience with the dog. So my Rottweiler only lived till 9.5. The fact that we've had Paulie and his spirits are awesome right now. He's on good medication, and we got him a little wagon to take him around the neighborhood so he can still go on his walks. So I'm trying to 2020. If I could fist fight 2020, I would. It's not been the best year, but I'm trying to look at this as positive as I humanly possibly can. And 11 years with this dog. And I'm telling you what, guys, I know you guys don't know him, and he's basically in my family, but we took this dog everywhere, man. We didn't, we never boarded him. Like if we went to San Diego, Los Angeles, Colorado to visit friends, Phoenix for whatever, you know what I mean? Cause I'm in Vegas. I had my show here, 9:20 The Game, the Mac Attack. It got canceled because of COVID. But he went everywhere. So if anyone who knows the Southwest, we took this dog everywhere. So he had a life and an adventure better than a lot of human beings, certainly better than me up until a certain point in my life. So he's, all things considered, in a very long roundabout way, he's doing pretty good. Thanks for asking.
awesome, man. And so obviously you mentioned a show that got canceled, which, very sorry to hear. But many of our listeners are familiar with your work on SiriusXM, either with MMA Tonight or with Busted Open Radio. How did you get involved with those shows and SiriusXM as a whole?
Yeah. So, so it's a long sort of question, right? How I got started with SiriusXM to start with goes back a long time. So we got to go back about 13 years. I was still finishing up college back in Indiana. I graduated from IU. I was finishing up, probably was up in my 4.5 year. And I just started covering the sport of mixed martial arts, so the UFC. And at that time, it was the International Fight League, the team-based local regional thing that was going on. They ended up going public, like early Elite XC, but it was like Elite XC, IFL, maybe a little Strike Force here or there. It wasn't the UFC yet that I was really covering, but I was working for lower level websites and I was kind of leveling up, right?
Yeah.
I was still in college. I was taking what I could get, very much working for free. And for anyone who would say yes, just trying to get in my foot in the door and meet people, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. Then I got my first paid gig, and that was at a website called MMA Madness. It's no longer around, but at that website, I was on staff with guys like Luke Thomas. One of my buddies Luke's my colleague at SiriusXM now on Fight Nation, the channel we're talking about. But other buddies of mine like Danny Acosta and others, we kind of formed a group and common minds and common interests. Through MMA Madness, that's when I started doing hits on Sirius, right? So this was back in 2007. I just was doing guesting spots, talking mixed martial arts. That led into meeting people at Sirius, which led into doing guest spots on pre-shows and post-shows, which led into around 13 and 14 starting to do like pre-shows and post-shows of my own. Then I think I became a full-time, or not a full-time, but an actual employee in around 15. And around that time, I started also working at Yahoo Sports as a sports writer because I was doing writing and radio. Really, guys, and you know this, I also had a podcast back in like 12. Yeah. Our generation, you know, mid-30s, I'm just guessing. Mm-hmm. It's very much you do what you can while you can and make yourself as valuable as possible. So that's really what I was trying to do. And even to an extent today, you still try to do. You try to have your fingers in as many jars as you possibly can because you don't know when COVID's going to hit. You're going to lose your local show in Vegas. It's also a generational trait, right? Mm-hmm. But so I started doing that. Then I started getting like pre-shows official, started getting paid regularly. And that led to obviously relationships and shows and different pairings with different hosts. But then Busted Open came about really because I'm a pro wrestling fan. Really from FSW out here in Vegas, mm-hmm. right, all the way to obviously WWE and AEW and Impact and everything that's going on now. I've just always loved pro wrestling. They had me fill in on a couple of shows with Mark Henry and Bully mm-hmm. Ray and doing some shows on Busted Open there in the beginning. Just they needed me because LaGreca or whatever couldn't fill in or couldn't host. And then when the time came around October last year, they asked me if I wanted to do the Saturday show every Saturday. You hope that you make a good impression. I guess that I did. And I've been getting to have fun every Saturday with a WWE Hall of Famer ever since. And it is legit fun because I don't really have to, I'm not a business reporter. I'm not Meltzer. I'm not any of these guys. Like I just get to talk pro wrestling with 1/5 of the Nation of Domination every Saturday. And I am a journalist in some level. When I still kind of wear that hat in the MMA space. But with pro wrestling, I do not care. I just get to be a fan and I get to talk. I don't know if we can cuss, talk crap. Yeah, talk shit. And have a good time. Like I said with Mark, and sometimes I'll get to fill in with Bully. So that was a very long roundabout way of how I got there. But it's a very jumbled, up and down, zigzaggy, not perfect, imperfect path. Yeah, it's very, very chaotic.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So obviously being a huge wrestling fan, reporting on MMA, can you think back to the first combat sporting event that you went to where you just knew that this was something that you wanted to be affiliated with or that you wanted to follow?
Yeah, that's a great question because I have an answer. It's a very specific answer. Well, it's kind of two parts. So my love for MMA, very much the beginning, the birth, UFC 1. I was 10 years old. I was like the Faces of Death kid at the, we had this like local video spot, like Hoosier Video, like anything freak showish or anything that was just off the wall and absurd. Guys, again, 93. Beavis and Butthead, Jerry mm-hmm. Springer. I'm not, White Men Can't Jump. I saw it in the theater in 93. Like I grew up fast, right? I was raised by a VHS and a VCR. So when UFC 1 came out and people were punching each other in the balls and there was a sumo guy versus a ground fighter and like Bruce Lee versus whatever, I was all the way in because, it was Ninja Turtles and Van Damme movies and pro wrestling. That's really all I had at that point. So that piqued my initial interest, and I would say I was a casual watcher, right?
Let me ask you this,
Ryan.
What's up? Really quick, let me ask you this because you just made me think to. I was just a little bit older than you when that first one came out.
Yeah.
The one thing that I couldn't get grasped, I didn't get hooked into it because of the fact that I didn't know who these guys were. Was that something that you were more excited about, that action aspect of it? Because to me, what was interesting is being a pro wrestling fan coming from the Hogan era, I was hooked on characters more so than sport.
Yeah, but first of all, I don't know. I mean, I was 10, so I don't think I was that in tune with like character development or like what I wanted out of the entertainment. It was the freak show value, right? But by the time the freak show aspect of it had worn off, you had Ken Shamrock, you had Hoist Gracie, you were going into Dan Severn, Tank Abbott would follow, and it was a domino effect after that. Obviously, Tito Ortiz, Chuck Liddell, the list goes on and on and on. Obviously, George St. Pierre, et cetera, et cetera. Brock Lesnar, as we're talking pro wrestling. So it really, when it got rough for me was the John McCain dark years. When McCain called it human cockfighting, it essentially got taken off a pay-per-view. And even the fights that were happening, it was the era of the dominant wrestlers. So Mark Kerr, the Smashing Machine, right, the documentary, Mark Coleman. It was very ground-based, and they hadn't adapted the rules yet to where there were stand-ups. So you think you've seen boring fights now. You go back to like UFC, Randy Couture, some of those early, UFCs when the ground fighters, because again, guys, not that we need to get too much into this, but that sport is still very much in its infancy. We're talking 25 years essentially, right? Yeah. A little bit longer and not really, but you can literally chalk up the eras to when people were playing catch up to the styles that were dominating. So the first 7 years or whatever, let's just say it was jiu-jitsu. It really wasn't, but the wrestlers took over a little quicker. But once the wrestlers figured out jiu-jitsu and how to fend off submissions enough that they could lay on people and pound the shit out of them, that's what they did. Once the strikers learned how to defend a takedown, then they neutralized the wrestlers. Then you started to see the era of the all-around fighter, the era. So you had the striker dominant Chuck Liddell, Vanderlei Silva, 03, 04 Shogun, who just fought on Saturday night. Like the 06, that middleweight / light heavyweight, depending on what organization we're talking about, Grand Prix. So there was that era, that striker, then that led into the era of the all-around and all-encompassing mixed martial artist. So when you talk about star building, that period specifically was difficult because it was early and it was so ground-based. So you had Hoist, like I said, but it took a little bit to get to the exciting parts of the history of MMA. So back to your original question about was there a moment? It was, yes, UFC 1, but then there was Ground and Pound 3. It was Ground and Pound 3 at my local police FOP in 1999. And I went with my buddy Brian Post, and we went because our other buddy, who was 2 years older than us, he was a junior, but he was 17, so he was allowed to fight. Terry Saylor, who was this – I grew up in Indiana, Northwest Indiana. Terry Saylor was this crazy, dip-chewing 17-year-old hillbilly that was on the wrestling team, had cauliflower ear. Kid was psychotic. Driving drunk when he was 17, just, I don't know where he's at now, but Terry was a wild, wild, wild dude. And we went to watch him fight, and he laid out this like 40-year-old hillbilly. I'll never forget it. He beat the shit out of him and let him leave it on a stretcher. And I just remember sitting in the FOP. I don't know. It wasn't anything primal. I didn't overthink it. It was just like, that's somebody I know that just beat the shit out of an old dude in like a semi-professional setting. I don't know. But it was just, it wasn't so much that I could do that. It's just that, I don't know. There was a little bit of a primal instinct there, but it was also the understanding that Terry was on the football team, that he was on the wrestling team, that this is a guy that we knew that could actually go out there and do something. There was something about that early MMA grassroots movement where local talent, local stories, local competitions really were thriving, even into the mid-2000s, with Affliction shirts and Ed Hardy jeans. That was special. But it still had like a weird sort of, I don't know, communal aspect. So it was a community, much like pro wrestling, guys. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's so, and metal, as we look at the Metallica stuff behind me. I mean, there's something about all those communities in hip hop. I'm a big hip hop fan. I've run the jewels there. I don't know. There's just something unifying about that. And there's traits and commonalities you find in all of it. And there was a commonality in mixed martial arts, and especially when you got into the philosophies of it. I mean, yes, there's a primal instinct to it, but I mean, it is steeped in tradition and religion and Eastern arts and Bruce Lee. And like I said, all these things that I was already kind of interested in anyway. And it was a place and time. It was 1999. Limp Bizkit was raging on the charts, and jean coat jeans were, everything, and Airwalk shoes. Yes. I'm old.
Oh, man. Yeah, those were the days, man, for sure. Now, obviously, you mentioned music and music and MMA, pro wrestling, they've been really, really well intertwined over the years. And obviously, looking right behind you, you've got the framed posters and the plaques and, all your different CDs. I took a look at your social media, man. You've definitely seen your share of live music. So I've got to know, man, who puts on the best show that you've seen? I'm putting you on the spot. I know.
I'll say this. I almost had to break it down by region or by band or by genre. It's like,
sure.
who does what best where. I can tell you my 3 favorite Vegas shows because I was talking about them today. Mm-hmm. One was a System of a Down show at T-Mobile, and it was just 2 years ago.
Yep,
but I was worried that the reception was not going to be what I wanted it to be because I hold System of a Down like Prison Song in 2001 to a kid from Indiana talking about the privatized prison industry. And like maybe I didn't hear it for the first 50 times, but eventually I started to actually listen what they were telling me, and Rage Against the Machine. And those bands to me mean so much, right? Like the perspective they offered me and the value they gave me. I just can't speak enough on it. So I wanted a good show from them. Because I saw Jimmy Cliff here at Brooklyn Bowl, a reggae legend, and there were like 25 people in the crowd, and I swear the dude cried. And that made me want to cry. But I still watched him power through it as a professional, which was awesome. But you never want to see that. If there's someone you love and respect, you want them to feel that energy, right? Yeah. So it was damn near a sellout, and it was a wild ass show where people were just going absolutely. People had like traveled in, you know what I mean? People had come in and experienced it. The other one is Metallica 2003, New Year's Eve at the Hard Rock here in Vegas, just because I had really good seats, and I've seen Metallica a lot in my life. That at that point I had still seen them a lot, but not as many as I had now. So there was very much that childlike wonderment, like seeing them in that scenario. And then another show was just 4 years ago. It was right when T-Mobile opened, that very first Guns N' Roses show. It was that first show that they had played. They played like they played a club on Sunset, I want to say like a week before, and I think that's when Axl broke his foot. So they played like a little warm club up gig, but their first serious show was at T-Mobile. We went to that, and that just the energy in that room, in terms of the anticipation. Holy shit, it's going to be Axl and Slash and Doug. Like everyone who's it's the Guns N' Roses experience that you've been waiting for, not Fat Axl doing residencies at the Hard Rock. No disrespect, but it was so good. When I got home that night, I bought tickets for Phoenix 5 months later at Glendale because I wanted to see him without the throne and the broken foot. I was blown away with how good they are, and now they're like 3 years into this tour, and they're everyone knows how good they sound. Again, but back to the original question: who puts on the best show I've ever seen? Man, Metallica does it really well. I've seen the Rolling Stones 5 times, and I don't care what anybody says. The endurance that those dudes have, and the diversity of age and women, as I'm just being honest, that they're able to bring to a crowd from 10 years old to 75 years old, of all colors, creeds, diversities. I have so much respect for that. They're up there. Lady Gaga is up there. I saw her about a year ago at her residency at Park MGM. What the listen, dude, I have Roger Waters, great show. Like, I mean, I've some of the bigger like stage acts that put on interactive stage experiences I've seen. Lady Gaga had so many set changes and pyro and robots and shit where I was just like, what is going on? Like it was like Wrestle Kingdom on steroids, but it was like, oh, then she's like kind of like a Tom Petty hit factory. Like I don't listen to Lady Gaga. Like I listen to Lamb of God. I'll listen to, great hip. Like I listen to a lot of different stuff. I don't listen to Lady Gaga, but I feel like I know every Lady Gaga song because almost how do you not? So like I'm sitting there and it's like this hit factory. So I'm like, oh, like the music's like, tolerable. She's clearly talented, but she's a showman. So when you ask like who can put it, like she's right up there. people I probably respect the most are the Rolling Stones, because their stadiums every time. They've been doing it for 6 decades. Their expectations they go out and they deliver. Yeah, they're old. Keith was in real rough shape this last time. But it's still the Rolling Stones. Let me ask you, like, growing up, did you know anyone who saw Babe Ruth play baseball?
Exactly.
No, I'm just, I didn't. I didn't. Yeah. But
nope.
If you did, would you ever sit and ask them and give the shit like, did you see him in 1934 or 1919? I don't actually know when he retired, but you get the point that I'm saying. Like, you don't care if you saw Babe Ruth hit his last home run or if you saw him hit his 500th. You just want to say that you saw a living legend and greatness in any sort of moment. It just so happens that, the Rolling Stones are artists and they can, expose the world a little bit longer.
Yeah, but, in that argument sense, too, one of the things that is most impressive about them, and it is Mick's 77th birthday today.
No kidding.
Yeah. Wow. And those of you who are listening and realize that this was taped and it's not actually his birthday today when you're listening.
Semantics.
Yeah. Tomato, potato.
Yeah.
But to be 77 years old and to still move like you're 20 years old, it's absurd.
He is a pillar. So like we're living in the era of sports with LeBron James and Tom Brady, where they're nutritional wizards, where they just take their health and their future in ways in a serious nature that we haven't really seen before with professionals. Mick has been on that. Now, yes, a lot of probably, speedballs and wild cocaine whiskey nights. I mean, they're the Rolling Stones, but even they they were a great pathway for me growing up because, I lived a wild life. And I tried to listen to people who were smarter than me. And those guys were always saying, don't mix drugs. Don't do uppers and downers. In hindsight, it was actually really good advice because I lived. And now I'm sitting here mostly sober outside of the green medicine and, the occasional, Moscow Mule or Japanese whiskey. But, they actually were kind of leaders and teachers in that way. So cheers and happy birthday to you, Mick Jagger, on your 77th. But no, point being, yeah, they lived a wild life. But I know for a fact that people that I know very close people that worked with the Rolling Stones when they came to town, Vegas Talks, the hotel industry, and that served them when they came here. And they're not necessarily Keith, but Ronnie Wood and Mick, their workout regimens and their scheduling is ridiculous in terms of when they get up in the morning, how many times they work out. It's multiple times. What they eat, very light fish. They eat very green because I'll tell you this, and I know we're being long here. That latest the documentary Crossfire Hurricane. It was a while now. It's maybe like 5-6 years ago. It was it was Scorsese's. I want to say it was on HBO. It was really good. Go out and watch it. But there was a scene in that movie where Keith was recounting the early years, when they were still doing their first like America tour, and they were like 4-H fairs, and it was like the Under My Thumb years, I believe, and they weren't. It was Beatlemania, and the Stones were catching up, but they weren't what they were gonna be, but they were really popular. He told a story about how 3 songs in, almost every night, a pile of liquid would form at the front of the stage. And he's like, it wasn't sweat, it wasn't like they were dropping their water, it was people pissing their pants. And I remember stopping the documentary and like looking at my wife and just like, I just want you to put that into perspective. You have had human beings pissing themselves at your feet for 5 decades. What sort of levity does that bring you? And like, what sort of ego check? Like, the God complex that they must have had at different times in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. They were and are one of the biggest acts running in the history of planet Earth. So with that said, again, in a very long roundabout way, I think Mick Jagger, and I don't want to be too presumptuous, but I feel like I've seen him and heard him enough of him talk. I think he grew into a responsibility of understanding, hey, like, I am an important person and what I say does hold weight and the experience I give my fans matters. So he wants to do that as long as he possibly can and at as a high level as he possibly can. And I cannot respect that more. It's the same respect I have for Metallica playing, Blackened at 59 years old. Like, I wouldn't want to play that at 28 years old. Like, I mean, I see him at special shows. I just saw him at the S&M2 shows for the San Francisco Symphony. Like, they still, even with a symphony, with when the breakdown in one, like, that's not light music, and they're going to go into their 60s playing it, and it's admirable. I love art, so I have no other choice but to respect a guy like Mick Jagger, who, puts his, yes, I'm sure he's an ass, I'm sure he's got an ego, I'm sure he's a diva, all those things, but when you think about what he gives, and I know he makes a lot of money, but do you think I would be doing that shit at 77? Do you think I would be caring about touring at all? No, I would be getting my last kicks in. I'd be like, I got 13 good years at best. I mean, to 90, I don't even know if you can have a good year at 90. I have no idea. I'm just saying, I'm trying to think positive on Mick Jagger at 77. I wouldn't want to be touring. Get out of here.
And think about it too. I mean, the Undertaker is just a pussy then in those. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's a whole other story, right? That's the advantage that the Stones have. They can chase that dragon. They can chase. I mean, shit. That's when I saw the Stones for the first time. United Center 1996, which is probably as old as Taker is now. Taker's got to retire and step away from that adrenaline rush when the Stones have gotten to grab it for another 25 years. That pull of the crowd and walking out of the curtain, that's all they're talking about. When guys are like, oh, it's the fans, I miss the fans. No, you miss the ego boost. That's why you risk your neck and why you risk the safety of your family. We go back to the documentary, what was the Wrestling with Shadows, or the Mick Foley documentary where you see the old Royal Rumble. That wasn't the Wrestling with Shadows. It was Beyond the Mat.
Beyond the Mat, yeah.
Yeah. But you get, Foley bringing his kid there and his wife. And I mean, there's a million other examples of it, of what you put your family through. But all the workers and all the guys, I do it for my family, or I do it for no, you don't. You didn't start for this. It is just like mixed martial arts. You do it because you are selfish and you want to be famous and you love the addiction of the crowd. Now I'm sure it gets intertwined, right? Like John Cena, the responsibility that dude has meeting with soon to be dead kids. Seriously, think about that.
Yeah.
The pull that must put on your soul. So I'm sure it morphs. You want to be famous, you want to be world champ. Well, then it becomes about responsibility. Right? Then there's all these other moments you think about, and I'm sure Undertaker thinks about it, right? Yeah. Oh, what do I mean to these people, and what does the character mean? I mean, you saw him battling with it in the documentary, so it's all very interesting. And yeah, I mean, but that's part of why I started as a sports writer as well, because those stories are so interesting. As fighters, wrestlers, whatever the case may be, the what you sacrifice and what you give up for one moment or one match, the striving for greatness, championship glory, it's all, I mean, it's universal, but it's also, it's a wild, wild journey a lot of these guys are on.
Without a doubt, man. And now, obviously, you mentioned responsibility. Kind of shifting gears just a little bit here. Obviously, COVID has taken over the world, and the world has just fucked itself beyond all recognition. Realistically, though, we've started to see how the UFC and how pro wrestling has responded to the pandemic, and the things that they've put into place, being able to run shows in a post-pandemic world, kind of fusing that back to another love of yours, being live music. How do you think that we will see live music acts adapt to a post-pandemic world?
I think it's gonna be slow. Right? It's going to be a feeling out process. I think the sporting organizations are having the ability to learn from each other and compare notes. Artists are going to have to do the same. It's going to be a slow process. Obviously, a lot of it's going to depend on a vaccine. That goes for almost everything that we're talking about with the future of everything here in the world or in the country or in whatever state you may be living in. I think it's going to be slow. I think you're going to have obviously things in place in terms of capacity. I don't think there's any question about that. You're going to see, you're going to see social distancing in place. Obviously, maybe some more hand sanitizer. Maybe you'll have mask policies. You know what I mean? But these are just general changes, adaptions that we'll have to have until like we talked about, once we get a vaccine, it'll be like every other outbreak. And that's the great thing about history. It's amazing what books have. You can like even go in your Google bar and type in pandemics and learn from past history, polio and the flu and the Spanish flu and what plague. Well, plague fucking. Well, I'm glad we're not at that level, right? People talk about death rates, and it is very serious. And obviously, wash your hands and practice social distancing and wear your masks. But I say regularly, I'm glad we're not into like the 10 or 15% mortality rate, because that's some real scary, plague stuff, and it's possible. That's the other thing. That's the other thing that I think that people don't realize.
Ryan.
What's up?
I'm sorry. Really quick. For some reason, it cut out right after you said the Spanish flu.
No problem. Here, hold on one sec. Let me change my internet connection to one of the different ones. It might cut out for a second, but I'll jump back on.
Okay.
All right. Hopefully that'll help. Is that better?
Yeah, no, it's fine. I just wanted if you can pick it up that point, because the point was missed basically.
Yeah, no problem.
So let's say you were talking about polio and the Spanish flu.
Yeah.
Pick it up from there so we can finish that thought.
Cool, no problem. But yeah, polio, Spanish flu, there's other examples of pandemics, impacting the world, and it all depends on a vaccine. And once you get into that, then it just becomes a thing of the past, right? We're just here in this generation having to deal with it. So it's a place and time. I'm trying to be mindful of that. I'm trying to be mindful of that when I'm talking about pro wrestling, or I'm looking at things in regards to mixed martial arts and I'm grading or critiquing or whatever the case may be. Everyone's really just trying to do their best. You know what I mean? Everyone's trying to do what they can to, get by and to put shows on in the best possible way. I think some people are doing it better than others. I think music is going to have to adapt to that. I think you're going to have failures. You're going to have people in certain states that don't take it seriously, and they're going to have to face consequences because they might get back too early, or they might not implement certain standards. You know what I mean? It's going to be a learning process. The public's going to judge accordingly. I won't be going to things where I don't feel safe. And I think that goes for everybody. It's just, you're going to speak with your dollars. You know what I mean? Like it's just the people who are going to do it right will do it the right way, and they'll get my business, and the people who don't won't. And that's really what's going to dictate going forward. And everyone's going to have to adapt. Everybody's going to have to adapt. Sporting organizations. And that's what I'm really interested to see is what's the response going to be like, guys? Like when we can go back to concerts, will demand be lower, and will touring acts, WWE artists, music, whatever the case may be, are they going to suffer because people don't want to be around people again? Or is there going to be a hunger and this insatiable thirst to quench for people to go out and to experience live entertainment? I don't know what it's going to be. Maybe it's a little bit of both. I honestly don't know. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out, but I can't wait. I can't wait to find out. I can't wait to get there and start experiencing it again.
As we kind of wrap up here, and again, we're going to keep it a little shorter because of the fact that your dog's going through a little bit of hard times, and you got to pay a little attention to him, and basically don't stick the wife with the dog too long. But is there something that when you do these shows that you look forward to on a weekly basis?
Yeah. I mean, doing them in general, still having a job in the COVID era, getting paid to do this, because there have been periods in my career where you work for free and it's horrible. And you're talented, and that you have brands behind you, and you've done this and you've contributed this, and it's all, but none of it matters. None of it matters because this industry, media, is, especially in sports, it's very competitive. It's very time consuming. You need a lot of faith. You need faith from people around you. Some people get lucky. Some people right off the bat, They have good position. They have good security for whatever reason, things go their way right from the start. That hasn't really been my case. You know what I mean? So when you say, is there something I look forward to? Again, just generally having the job and being paid to do something that I love. Back before I lost my local show, and that was only about a month ago over at Lotus Broadcasting, I went 2.5 years of working 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. And I loved it. And that Saturday show, the Busted Open show, we right now we're recording early. So we record at 4 because we don't have a weekend crew at Sirius yet. So 4 a.m. we're recording. So I'm up at 2:30. And then I was some shows. I do shows with Steve Cofield on ESPN. We were finishing at 6, and I had to get home and watch SmackDown. The turnaround on that was very, very small. But again, you appreciate the fact that at the end of the day, you're being paid to bullshit with your friends and talk about sports and have fun. And I interviewed Shaquille O'Neal. We had Shaquille O'Neal in studio last year. It was like right after Russell Westbrook got traded to the Rockets. And I'm a Bulls kid. I grew up Chicago everything. And Michael Jordan, I grew up in South Bend. Had BJ Armstrong on my show a few months ago. Like, that stuff's great. Like, just like little benchmark. I mean, obviously getting to do a show with Mark Henry, Nation of Domination. Are you kidding me? I was 14 when the Nation debuted. Like, yes, all day, Nation of Domination. Let's go. Yeah. So it's I mean, everything. Of course it's a job like anything else. You have to prep for it, and you have to study, and you have to be on your shit. Like, and you don't think there's people that want that job. You don't think there's people that want to do Busted Open radio, people that are much more powerful and famous and, accredited than I am? Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's essentially, there's a pressure too, that every time you hit the airwaves, don't mess up because someone wants your job and you are not secure. And you have to balance that fear and that anxiety and that understanding that it is highly competitive. But then you also, you have to have fun. So I try to, and this is not what you asked me, but we're going there anyway. I try to just kind of sit back and let the universe take me and understand that you can only control so much. So I work my ass off. I try to remain genuinely passionate and happy about my situation and the things that are outside my control. Whether it's COVID or not COVID, why did I lose the, Mac attack? They tell you one thing. Do you actually know? I don't know. And you can't dwell on those things because all you can control is your work ethic, the way you treat people, and how much work you put into the shows that you do. And I'd like to think that, I try to put in as much work as possible and remain positive. And we'll get through 2020 together. We're all in this together, guys. And you know what? There is some truth in that when these baseball players are being forced out here to work and make money on these TV deals for these billionaire owners, right? I know that, Bryce Harper's making like $300 million.
Right.
He's still risking his life to make $300 million. And these billionaire owners aren't doing anything. They're sitting up in their sky. They're not even in their skyboxes eating shrimp cocktails. They're back at home with their like helicopter Ubers. And I don't even know what these guys are doing. I have no idea because I'm never going to have $1 billion, right? But what I'm saying is we have a lot more in common with the millionaire baseball players than we do, obviously, the billionaire owners. So when I say we're all in it together, this COVID hell, as Mark Henry likes to call it, is kind of showing us, we do have a lot more in common with Bryce Harper than you thought we did, right? Because their owners don't care about the players either. They're like, go out there and die. Go out there and get COVID and take it home to your family. We don't care. Vince McMahon, you think Vince McMahon? Like, what they say in the WWE, like some 30, upwards potentially 30 talent tested positive. Yeah. Old girl, why is her name blanking me? Rusev's Lana's mother was in the hospital with COVID. I don't know how I didn't get the last update, but it was very serious, and I believe she was on a ventilator. The point of what I'm trying to say is, and I don't know, and I'm not speculating, I'm just saying, what if Lana got that at the Performance Center, brought that home to her mom, and now her mom's potentially dead, right? Like, that's crazy. So the grocery store worker who's working at Smith's and risking their life because the fat hillbilly doesn't want to put their mask on because this person's out here making $10 an hour, like, it's crazy to think about. But that person has a lot in common with Bryce Harper from the standpoint of their bosses not caring about them. Now, Bryce Harper gets compensated a little bit more. You know what I mean? But it's still, what's a life worth? You can't spend your 300 million if you're dead. You know what I mean? Now, I know, again, we're talking young, healthy athletes. Like, they're most likely going to be okay. But I use the Alana example for that specific reason. This isn't about you and me and us. Like, we'll probably all be okay. You know what I mean? But it's not about that. So, you know what? And I'll end on this. It really sucks that I lost my show. You know, the fact that COVID hit and there are no sports, at least in the capacity that we can go out and do remotes and sell sports how you normally do as a sports show. But I would rather not have my job than have sports back, or like have people so have people risking their lives for my job and my livelihood. Like, that doesn't make me feel good. I don't want to see us rush back. I don't want Lana's mom dying. That's not me virtual signaling or being a white knight. It's just basic human decency. Like, hi, historic time, whole world shut down, global pandemic. Let's try not to be dicks. Let's for once try to understand that we all are interconnected. And I hope this is showing that, because this thing spreads because we're interconnected. It's like, hi, how you doing? And how you doing? And here's 50 more, and here's 100 more. And now we're still stuck in the grips of it. So we will get through it. Everyone has to get a little bit smarter each day and wake up relatively quickly and realize that, you know, we do have to get all on the same page. So I don't even remember what the original question was, but we got there.
That's it. You know, one final thing as we thank you once again for joining us. We'll definitely have you back, especially talk a little longer. We'll get into a little bit of more about Chicago. I grew up there.
Nice.
Yep. And my final thought is, what does it feel like as a Sox fan to know that the World Series you won was illegitimate because of the fact that AJ Pierzynski is a cheater?
That's where we're going. I guess on the cheating scale, are we talking about the Anaheim game, the Anaheim series? Is that what we're talking about? All right. It's been so long. It's all the North Side complaints have come together. That right. There was that period there for about a decade where Cubs fans didn't have their World Series, and they were very, very, very salty. But I'll tell you what, I went to game 1 of the ALCS against the Angels, and I went to game 1 against the Astros in the World Series, and there were quite a few Cubs hats at Comiskey and those games. Like, people were there celebrating Chicago baseball. People just wanted to see Chicago get a World Series. But no, I'll tell you this. I mean, it's great being a White Sox fan. I'll say, I mean, we have a young roster that obviously looks somewhat promising. Pitching is going to be the death of us, but we can fix that. I'll say this. I'm not greedy. So we got ours in 2005. I got to go to game 1. I'm good for life. That's all I need. I want Notre Dame now and the Chicago Bears. I don't remember Tony Rice, and I don't remember Jim McMahon. So I want my Super Bowl, and I want my national title. I have spent thousands and thousands of dollars supporting these teams. I have bled and sweat and parking lot fights and friendships lost and legitimate heat. So many years. It's been like 25 years of hate. Like, just let me stop being angry, sports world. Just let me, and I don't care which one comes first. I don't even care if there's like a 20-year gap, but I need a football championship. I have no idea what that's like. Watching those Chiefs fans in February with Pat Mahomes, I was so happy for them because Eagles fans, when they were up, I stayed up all night after the Eagles won, just watching those idiots eating horse pie turds and falling off of hotel awnings. I was like, you big dumb bastards, good for you. Like, I hope that Chicago loses their shit half as much as Eagles fans did when they finally got their Super Bowl, because it's almost, I don't even know. I don't even know what I'll do. I really don't. Like, the Blackhawks won 3, and that was special. The Golden Knights, I mean, I'm a season ticket holder for the Knights because I'm a hockey fan, and I wanted to bring hockey here. But then I went to almost every game that first season because, like, how could you not? I was planning on selling.
Exactly.
I was planning on selling tickets, but as a hockey fan, I'm like, this is an expansion team that's number 1 in the West, and they're beating the Lightning at home with like 2 seconds left. Like, it was just these leveling up moments to where I'm Chicago everything. I'm Blackhawks first and foremost, but experiencing that, and I got to go to playoff games during the Blackhawks run. Experiencing that Golden Knights run just as a sports fan, as a Vegas fan, I love Vegas with all my heart. but just as a sports fan, to watch that happen and to watch a city, especially after obviously October 1st, latch on and to have those stories play out seemingly on an every night basis and have like the gaze of the sports world checking in. You guys remember what it was like having the Sports Center ticker chime in and having people like pay attention. What a special time that was. So definitely. Yeah, man, championships. Let's get championships for everybody, but let's start with the Chicago Bears. Let's start with that. And I don't know how the hell that's going to happen because Mitch Trubisky's still the quarterback and God hates me. Yeah. God hates me. Our best quarterback, Chicago Bears, has been around 100 years. 100 mother effing years. And Jay Cutler is the best quarterback that team has ever had in the history of their entire existence. And
they could have had Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah. No. Oh, yeah. No, that's fun. That's every
I had to twist that knife a little bit.
Oh, yeah. Every draft year it gets brought back around. It's like, hey, remember those jerk-offs to Chicago Bears? And it's not like they don't mention anybody else because, well, no one else was stupid enough to mortgage their entire future to move up one fucking spot to take a guy who only had one season as a starter. Oh, and it was at North Carolina, the basketball school. Now, it's like, I get when you have a guy, you have a character guy that you like, and that's what they try to sell you on. When you got the big, tall, white quarterback, because that's what the NFL likes. They like the tall, pretty white quarterback. Like, oh, he's got stature. He's got calmness in the pocket. He's whatever. There's the other thing. Lamar Jackson. In the last pick, like you couldn't have seen Lamar Jackson play at Louisville and be like, gee, he's kind of talented. He's leapfrogging people like Saquon Barkley. Like he's 360 spinning. Like I think he's got some talent we can work with. You see that, but then you get a hard-on for Mitch Trubisky and trade up one spot. It's the optics of how, you marked out for a guy that it defies logic. We're 5 years here later, and it still leaves me stumbling for words, and I'm not a guy who stumbles for words. Like, I feel like I have enough words. But you bring up Mitch Trubisky and the trade and the Bears and what they did, and it's really Ryan Pace. It's really it's an organizational thing. It's the entirety of the McCaskies and the Chicago Bears just doing dumb shit. They mortgaged their entire future to get Jay Cutler. It's like, don't you think that Denver might, on some level, have an idea of why they don't want him around and to give him $100 and whatever million? It's just, they make me so sad. And people spend so much money. Like, Bears fans, you guys know this. You're from Chicago. You know this. Like, they're out here in Vegas. They're everywhere. When they play the Cardinals, it's a Bears game. When they play any of the LA teams, it's going to be Bears games. When the Bears finally come here, it's just like the Chiefs. It's going to be a Bears game. They spend so much money. They're so loyal, and they're so dumb. We are so dumb. Bears fans are so dumb. We should all give up. We really should. It's just not – it's not worth it. It's terrible. Ugh.
Well, on that happy note, we will take ourselves and just kind of go back in the hibernation cave until football eventually starts, and hopefully – all our teams will have a good season, and being Bears fans, we know that
that won't happen.
At least we'll be better than the Lions.